Okay, I guess it's still morning. I figured we'd run out of time and I wouldn't have to give one of these. So Willem had called me, and, or actually had sent an email looking for some people to do some presentations. I kind of didn't think about the email. I kind of neglected it until I happened to give him a call to ask about a question on one of our router configurations. And before he would answer it, it was like, well, I sent you an email. What are you going to do for a presentation? And I figured that I was off the hook since he got me with last month's RMHAM University. But I was kind of thinking about, what could I do that was nerdy? And we were talking about titles, so this one kind of come to mind. But as I was looking through some of my pictures and getting it for this, I was thinking, almost everything we do in amateur radio is a little nerdy. And so I started looking through some pictures, and I took about a 12-year break from amateur radio. I got back into amateur radio, and a lot of this time has been spent with RMHAM. Are we getting my audio all right? Okay, it's been spent with RMHAM. So for part of this, I kind of went through some pictures and showing some of the nerdy stuff that I think that we're doing. So I kind of went through from my agenda some of the nerdy things, some of the things that I've done in the last few years. And kind of going from John's presentation, I was interested in some Doppler as well. This is more of the ham grade type Doppler, I think. It's not all together, but I'll kind of show you where I'm at, and I've got a ways to go. But to start with, I'd kind of put together some things that were nerdy that I've done in the last few years. And the one things with RMHAM is we want to do the important things first. So from field day, Rob and Becca brought up a pizza oven. So we were able to make some pizza with our faces and some things on it. If I'm going with Doug, before we go to a site, we got to go to Starbucks or Maggie's for the Beast. Doug typically brings the sandwich. We call it a big-ass sandwich that when we go to the sites. And Doug is kind of sitting there. That one was from Upper Dowd at our Vale site. We kind of had a rodent-induced failure. They like the orange fiber. So first things first. Some of the site visits, I think that's one of the things that I like with RMHAM and some of the other groups, is an opportunity to go to some of these sites. So on the left with the green, that was the first time to Kremling. We had an event. We got Doug, K2AD, to get us a repeater fairly quickly for replacement. And Willem and I went up there and deployed it. We've done some work on the top with Mosquito Pass. The fun part was El Madre. Some folks down in Pueblo let our frequency coordinator, Tracy, K08C, and I borrow some ATVs to get up to the site. It was definitely a lot quicker than trying to take my Jeep. And one of our big hubs here in Colorado with a lot of the IP equipment and connectivity is up at Mount Thornton. We had some issues, so John took a tracked vehicle, took my Jeep up. We spent some time on the roof, so it's definitely a good view. We've got Rattlesnake, which is just some solar panels it's really quiet there. So we're going to try to go ahead and put some receivers in there for voting receivers. Some of the events that we've done, we do the Dirty 30, where we provide safety communications. We've got the satellite uplink on the bottom. What else have I done? I do on the bottom right, I do the Borough Races. That particular weekend was from Leadville up to the top of Mosquito Pass. The little red dot up there is actually our Mosquito Pass site. And that's me in there with the donkey. And I know Doug, K2AD, will get he liked this. The song will be in his mind throughout the day, but that's Dominic the donkey. We had some of the RMHAM assets at WWV. We do some Hamfest. That's Doug up there mopping the floor. I thought it was pretty telling when we was up there watching him with a mop. And kind of in the bottom, John Maxwell and I was up to Castle Peak, and somebody come up and said, "Man, we're seeing smoke," and so we were able to. It took a little bit to find where the smoke was coming from. We had called it in to the fire department. We were almost back down from Castle Peak, and the fire department wanted us to kind of go up with them and show them where the fire was. So luckily, they took it seriously because there'd been a major other fire off of I-70 a day or so earlier. And Gorefest was, I think, an event that Ben got us into. It's up off of Kremling, and again, some good views. This year when we went up, Willem thought we needed to take a walk down to the river to find a better access, but at least I got my steps in that day. Well, Willem claims he said, "Let's drive," but the gate was closed. So, some of the equipment, we've got some, Mosquito Pass is all solar panel. We've working in Doug's garage with when we built the buckhorn rack. John and I had tried to go up to Lee Hill to put in some fiber, but unfortunately the wind and the cold, so we weren't able to get that up on the first attempt. Kind of been with Tracy out to Parker for some of the 900 megahertz P25 system. The Firestone hub, Doug is on the tower. We were building Colorado Springs on Cheyenne Mountain. We've got on the bottom right, the repeater that was replaced for Kremling. We got it just in time for the Gorefest. And then I've got a microwave dish in my house so I can get into the backbone, but it's only in pretty much the winter time. My neighbor's, the tree hasn't blown over or died yet in its leaves. So this is just some, kind of miscellaneous. I use my Jeep for making some measurements and some different things, checking some sector coverage. The most recent one is on the bottom left. Dave Mack asked me to go up to El Dorado, and even though the road was being plowed, we were still needing to put 4 chains to get up there. So that's some of the, the weird things that I've done that are kind of nerdy. Oh yes, we've got the challenges. This is just a few locks. If you go to Horsetooth, you might have like 8 or 9 locks. Usually all of the combination locks look the same. So the first problem is, which one is my combination lock, and to go ahead and order the gate. I thought the picture on the right was interesting. We had just got off of Madre. Pretty nice day. We made it down into the middle of Colorado Springs, heading north back to Firestone, and the map is pretty telling. The blue dot is us, and it was pretty nasty. So that was kind of some of the things that I was thinking about when Willem asked me to do the presentation. But I'd started doing some Doppler research on, kind of a ham grade, something a little different than the K2NC that I've used on the QRV2. So this is the website for PA8W, and I liked what I saw, and I figured, what can I do to get a Doppler unit that I don't spend an arm and a leg? But after seeing, John's presentation, he usually shows stuff like this, and the next thing I know, I'm, getting the checkbook out and figure, man, I've got to have it too. So we'll see how it goes, and I may end up going that direction as well. This is the RDF43 made by PA8W. I do have this unit. It's Bluetooth linkable. It actually has some software for a server and computer software that you can send Your positions, you can put, say, hey, this is the position that I want. Go ahead and export the position. So when you hear a jammer come up, you can push the button and it'll display it on a server and others can come look at it. I don't know if there's going to be any compatibility with this, with some of the software that John is using, so I may end up doing an upgrade. This is the kind of the inside of the board and the enclosure that I received. So part of it is this is the preamp antenna array. It's got about 14 dB of gain, so I've got to be careful when I use it that I don't overdrive it or turn the preamps into a fuse. So this in the center is the summer, similar to the summer that John had showed, and then the preamps are on each antenna input. This particular unit we can spend from about 400 hertz to 1500 hertz. Rather than me making the circuit board, and maybe I need to go with the Dave 101 and come up with a circuit board and populate it, but these were the little pieces that I was able to order from, I think it was Germany, that come with it. So this is where I started to actually build my array. And this was just, I threw this in, one of the first units was the KN2C, the DF 2020. It's one of the first ones that we had in one of our vans. And like any good ham, we have to take things apart to see what's in it. So I figured since we took it apart and I found the pictures, we would include it. So this is where we get into the ground plane part that normally, you know, I've got a Jeep, and initially it wasn't as big a problem. You know, I've got a dual band half wave on the front, no ground plane needed, a couple half waves on the back for my 900 and my UHF. But as you can see on the right, almost the whole roof is fiberglass. So it wasn't going to be very conducive to put a Doppler on. So my solution was, you know, I found a Rhino rack that I could put on that has some metal that I figure that's a good place to, I didn't want to drill big holes in the top of the Jeep, but I figured that would be a good start. Originally, I was going to have somebody install it, but they wanted way too much money to put all of the pieces together for this rack. So I went ahead and assembled it, and I think the toughest part was drilling the first couple holes in my fiberglass roof to figure out, you know, I didn't want to be a half inch off, but luckily the holes worked out well. The directions did say I needed to take the top off, but I was thinking, well, if I get one more person here, that we can probably get the front bolts on around the roll bar without taking the top off. So once we got that on there, the next problem that I haven't addressed yet is my antennas in the back now don't work as well because of the my new metal roof, and my XM satellite antenna has to be moved as well because it's really poor when it's covered up with this aluminum frame. So building the array, I got the engineering paper out and kind of laid out on what I wanted the box to look like. You know, it wasn't really to scale, but drew some lines and I was able to fold it. And I thought, you know, great, this is, you know, this is exactly what I want. I did have access to a brake and a shear. However, we decided that this was beyond our folding abilities. So I did look around and I was able to find someone in Broomfield that, you know, I presented my little engineering paper design and was able to make my ground plane for it. So this is just kind of the steps of measuring it out. I think pretty much 7 inches and 17 inches for the center. I'm using NMO mounts for the antennas. So I went ahead and on mine, I had enough preamp boards, so I have a UHF set up in the center and a VHF setup on the outside. I have some layered metal caps so I can plug the ones that I'm not using or to protect the NMOs when it's not in use. And the one on the upper right was with all of the antennas on that I can use. And you'll notice it is still, for VHF, it's still not it needs a little more of a ground plane. So this was kind of the fit test before painting and doing some of the work on the inside. I was able to utilize the slide-in mounts on the Rhino rack to secure it to the top of the vehicle. And so the plan is where the red, I will put some, continue the ground plane out with some wires, and I may try to tie it into some of the rack. That's still to be determined. So on the bottom left is one of the preamps that I have. I was able to solder them directly to the NMO mounts, and then I went ahead and put, there's two N connectors coming in, one for U, one for V, and there's also, I'm going to use a Cat5 cable to run it to the control unit. This is after the paint job, and I don't paint in the house. It took about 3 or 4 days in the basement to get all of the nasty fumes out, but it was warm. So this is where I'm at now. Like I say, I still got some work on the inside to kind of go through, but that's what the unit's going to look like as I slide it on top of my vehicle. But after seeing John's presentation, I'm thinking, well, I can get a piece of metal that I can stick a mag mount to that's flat, probably slide that on top of the Jeep, and do an upgrade before I even get this one installed. But the next step is the wiring. On the left was the last time I had my Jeep apart. But within the process of doing this, I want to reduce some power. I figured, well, if I'm taking it apart, to put an HF rig. So, I don't have the heater in the garage yet, so that's a good excuse for the winter. But my Jeep will look like that again when I start doing some more work. The mounting, I did have an ICOM, I think it's an R100 receiver. I'm going to mount on the dash and then take the control unit and put it off of a RAM mount. So I've got a lot of work to go on this, but it's with all of these other nerd projects that this is kind of taken a back burner. And that's what I have. Are there any questions? What I have is I've only got one control unit, so if I want to run VHF, on the left side, it's a Cat5 or a Cat6 cable I'm going to use for power and to power the preamps, and then the N connector will go into the R100. Any more questions? Not? Oh. There's a web page for that. What do you mean concentric squares for on which? Yeah, one for UHF.